This is Matt, an Australian businessman living in Bali who began visiting Indonesia 27 years ago. Matt shared why daily life in Bali is easier than in Australia, the key advantages of raising kids in Indonesia, and the biggest differences in doing business in Bali and the Philippines. I'm Max Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. Ayo pergi!
I started coming here 27 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
probably was very different Bali back then.
Very different Bali. But you know, still the same beautiful big Balinese smiles that you get from people, right? So that's there's something really special about the culture here that I think goes to, I connect it to, there's a very deep level of gratitude here. Like you see what's unique here is you see the offerings out on the street and people are stopping, if you actually stop to give thanks for whatever the reason is at that level of frequency, and you're going to put that level of effort in, that's got to change kind of who you are and as a being. So I think that's something that's quite magical about Bali.
How do you see Canggu is changing?
I'm away for every 2 weeks, and I come back for 2 weeks and that's just where did that come from? There'll be there's definitely another mini mart almost every other day that's opening up. I can't believe how many mini marts there are here. But there's the turnover in sort of restaurant locations, or another gym opens up. There's so much construction constantly. Like there's always like in the background here, there'll be the sound of a circular saw and a hammer going on, and there's another villa going up every day somewhere else. So even things like there's these shortcuts between two different areas, and they're massively overcrowded at different times of day with motorbikes. But it's really transitioned from seeing these lush rice fields in between to now shops popping up everywhere. And if you come to Bali for the first time, you drive through this area, it looks like it's very populated, and it is compared to what it used to be. But if you look at an aerial map, you'll see these big gaps in between, and it's sort of, you realise that there's a lot of land still in between the roads.
More villas to come.
Way more villas to come.
Some people say like living in Bali is like, especially if they come from like developed Western countries, it's like you have more freedom. You feel more freedom because it's like less regulated, less rules, a bit more chaotic, but still you have more options and more choices how you want to live. Is it the case for you, like compared to Australia?
Yeah, I definitely see that feeling of freedom here. And with that comes chaos, right? Like as human beings, we need structure in order to really be effective. And here there's a lot less structure. Like there's... if you go out late at night, you'll see people riding their scooters, and they've definitely had a lot to drink, and there's no worry or concern about that here. There's no sort of very little policing of it. Like in Australia, everyone's getting breathalyzed. Now, not saying either is right, wrong, or good or bad, but it seems to somehow work here that there isn't that level of control. But it gets pretty wild on the streets too. Like the motorbikes will be riding on the footpaths. You definitely never see that in Australia. People would be probably going to jail for that overnight, I'm sure, or some decent fines. Less regulations in general, but then there's some trade-offs as always with that. Like having visas here takes more effort than I guess if you're moving to Australia, that's a hard thing to do as well from a visa perspective. Yeah, less regulations. Anything to do with traffic, there's less regulations. After that, life just feels quite easy here. Because it's the fact that we can have the extra support around the house, like being able to have a nanny full time, and the cost of a nanny full time, it's more expensive in the Canggu region than others. Naturally, more competition here, but we spend about 600 Australian dollars a month for a full time nanny, and then full time driver, which he generally does overtime about 10 hours a week, and it's about a similar price to have a full-time driver, and then 2 full-time house team members, which combined is probably about $1,200 a month. And so at this point in time, to have that level of support, we actually used to have a full-time chef as well, and now tend to just sort of cook ourselves a bit more and keep it a bit more casual with the kids. But there was a time when full-time chef doing multi-course dinners, just like in a restaurant. The only challenge was that you start to put on a few extra kilos.
Raising 2 kids in Bali, can you share like your insights, like how much it costs, like what's the level for schools or preschools?
Canggu Community School is where the kids go to, so it's an international school. And one of the things that stood out for me, so it goes from like pre all the way through to year 12 or final year, And when looking at that school, one of the things that stood out was that all the kids in their final years get the pick of universities that they're after. So that to go towards the quality of education, that's a really important piece. And to know that they can achieve that is a big win. Certainly another thing about the school there is that the teachers are grateful to have the positions. It's like, can you believe it? They've got got a gig in Bali, and there's all this extra support in the rooms. Like you might have 3 or 4, support teachers per teacher, which you wouldn't see in like a location like Australia. It'd be one teacher for 25 or 30 kids.
What you learned from Bali, like coming here and living here permanently, how it changed your personality, your perception of things?
I think I'm calmer now. I'm still very driven, but if I was just in the city, I wouldn't get out as much. I definitely think I'm calmer now, and I think that more relaxed with the kids as well. Yeah. How has it changed my perception? Look at us here, sitting outside. We're on the grass. We've got our shoes off, looking up at a beautiful sky, and we know we've got rice fields out there. It just all feels a lot calmer.
Yeah.
I think environment has such a big impact on how you respond, and I'm really grateful. I get to just walk the kids to school in the morning. It's maybe 80 metres away for me here, and walk over there in the afternoon, pick them up from school. Now, if I was in Australia, I would be jumping in a car, or I probably wouldn't do it. Like it would be, but I'd be jumping in the car. I'd be spending all that time. That would add a lot of extra stress of just consumption of time. Oh, and there's more time here because back in Australia, it would be, I've got to cook, if dinner needs to be cooked tonight, someone's going down to the supermarket, buying some food, coming back, and someone's doing the prep. But here it's like, well, it's either, you can cook, or when the team can cook, or you could just go out to a restaurant or get Grab delivery. That's pretty popular for, meal deliveries, way more affordable here than if you're doing it in a first world country.
Yeah. You being an Australian, what do you understand about yourself being an Australian, living abroad for many years?
I think for me, it's a different level of openness or tolerance here as the Australian that's moved internationally. Because now you're the odd one out. Is one way to look at it. But compared to Australia, where sometimes I think there's a bit of less tolerance at times. It's a sweeping statement. It's not too fair to say. I'm certainly very grateful to have had my upbringing in Australia and then to be able to become an expat. It'd be interesting to watch the kids now as they have just lived in this incredible multicultural environment internationally. And I don't think they realise it yet, but when they're adults and people say, so where did you go to school? Oh, I grew up in Bali. And I'm like,
that's cool, yeah, that's a nice point.
Actually, it's nice to see you laugh there as well, because almost every time on a video call, or I'm in a taxi overseas or in a meeting, and someone's, where do you live, or where are you from, or where are you today? And you say Bali, everyone smiles. It's amazing, this impact that this little island as part of a bigger country seems to have. It's fascinating.
Do you go to Australia often?
Look, I haven't been there for coming up to 5 years now. The kids have been back with their mum a few times.
Yeah.
But most of my travel, though, I'm travelling every 2 weeks, and if it's not the Philippines, it might be USA or somewhere towards Europe as well. So I've got so much travel for business in the opposite direction. I just want to, when I'm here, I want to slow down. Take my shoes off and enjoy the grass and get on the beach. And
they recently just installed this in the airport. The machines, like the gate machines. Have you seen it? You can scan your passport.
I've seen it, but I'm over on the other side as a KITAS, the visa holder. I'm still going through the manual way. But it looks like just like Singapore, right? Put your passport in and...
Yeah, in Singapore we have that. But for some reason, my passport didn't work. And many people, they kind of try to go there and then it doesn't work, and they go to the manual one.
Right. Okay.
But still, it's much, when they make it work properly, it's going to be amazing.
Oh, it's completely changed.
It's a game changer.
Huge queues that used to be there. I definitely think that from a business person coming in and out regularly, if you don't have that fast pathway in, it consumes a lot of time. Yeah. But that's actually something that's interesting about here, is where talking about being less rules and so forth, you can get some things done differently. Like you can pay to have a fast track service to come through at the airport. And I've seen that in Europe and other locations too. Or another one, you can get a police escort if you want to get a police escort to get from one location to another. That's not something that any mere mortal could do if you're in a first world country normally. You have to be a diplomat to access something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a privileged life.
A privileged life, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are the biggest differences between Indonesia and the Philippines in terms of like lifestyle?
Lifestyle in Indonesia, there's the food is very different. And the quality of the produce here is a lot higher in Bali, in Indonesia, than what it is in the Philippines. And I think because Bali in particular, although Cebu is a real tourist location, which I don't ever think about it that way because I go there for work, but it attracts a lot of tourists from throughout Asia. Bali attracts more Europeans and Australians to the market, and so the quality of the restaurants, the standard of the restaurants here and the dining is much higher. And so I think that impacts lifestyle a lot here. I also find that here I just get around on the motor scooter and it's very free and relaxed, where it's a lot busier. The traffic's different in Cebu, so I'm driving a car there. So it feels a bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it in terms of the Filipino culture and like Indonesian culture? Or like working with people or dealing with people?
I think the language is the key thing.
Yeah.
I think what we see is that both have got very strong family unit ties. The religion in Philippines is Catholic, so that has an influence in general. And then Bali is such a multicultural religious location, and so but definitely family units are strong here. But it's the English, like with like all the law is in English in the Philippines, but here it's in Bahasa Indonesian, so it's a lot to get your head around to consider when you're like dealing with legal documents and so forth. And even just English is taught in the Philippines to everyone at school, where it's not the case here. So that's probably the biggest one to navigate.
And I guess it's like very different vibe also.
Oh, it's a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
And especially like in this area, it's a tourist vibe, it's a holiday vibe. People are going out and having a great time. Whereas where we are, it's very much a business vibe, right? We're in an IT park where it's 24/7 a day. There's always people on the street, so it's got a lot of energy where we work and spend most of our time. It's a different type of vibe.
Can you compare the type of expats who are living in Cebu here in Bali?
I find Bali has the most incredible mix of unique people doing really interesting things. Like the other day I was chatting to the CFO of a very large multinational payments company. And I was quite surprised to find this person working in Bali, and then people doing very creative things, very innovative things happening in Bali, whereas in Cebu, where we are, I don't find that same level of creativity. It might be more similar types of businesses. So that very intriguing conversations that you can have with people here in Bali.
What's the most surprising like meeting or someone who you met in Bali?
A friend that I went to university with 20 years ago. I was like, what are you doing here? He's living in Hong Kong or 27 years ago. And it was such a surprise to find someone from, and I know a lot of Australians come here, but that's for tourism. But I don't see as many that actually settle in for long term. Although we come across a lot of different cultures, because kids go to school at a local international school. So a lot of people from all around the world, but really not that many Australians that I've seen settle here.
Yeah, I think the big difference is maybe, I guess, like in the Philippines, in Cebu, you have like cheap and smart labor, like people, which you can hire. So basically, maybe their like agency type of business is more common. And in Bali, because you don't really hire like locals, unless you're in like real estate development or something. If you're on IT, it's more like the crowd, the community of like creative people, and that's why the expats are different.
If you're in IT or hiring people to work in IT, you'll be in Jakarta. If you're seeking talent there, you're not coming here to get the arbitrage on labour to supply it internationally, which is generally what you see in the Philippines. That's the outsourcing industry's real driver. And then there's definitely cheaper cost of living and cheaper labour in the Philippines. And then of course just the barrier to entry to live here in Indonesia is a lot higher because of the cost of the visa, as an investor visa if you're going to stay here long term. Whereas in the Philippines, it's not the same hurdle rate. So I think that also changes the type of expat that you're going to find here.
Yeah, that's why a lot of retired Americans I found
Yeah, is that right?
in the Philippines.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah.
The cost of living is more expensive here, I guess,
Oh,
compared to Cebu.
Yeah.
Is it?
And like, it doesn't have to be.
Ah.
Like, it depends on where you choose to live within Bali. I think
Yeah.
is the key. Like, look, cost of renting a nice location, either here or in Cebu, is quite similar. If you're going for something sort of higher end, it's similar. But the cost of living, and if you're dining out here, certainly in like the Canggu area, yes, it's definitely. I mean, it's cheaper than dining in Singapore or Australia or somewhere like that, but it's definitely risen a lot, even in the last 2 years I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you invest in?
So for me, I mean, I mainly invest in business and business growth. So we've a lot of investment in building out software products and building out the people business as well. And but property investment here, like there's a requirement with the visa that need to invest about $700,000 US dollars. Is that right? 700,000 US Australian dollars in order
Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. In order to be able to live here long term and take the benefits of the kitas and have kids go to school. I think if you're single or you've got no kids, you can navigate it differently here through business visas and so forth. But so your property here.
So you built a villa.
Yeah,
here,
built a villa here.
Yeah.
That's an interesting process, but a good one too. Like there's differences. Like you can cash flow the build of the villa. There's no finance here, so you've got to be prepared to pay everything.
No bank loans.
No bank loans.
Yeah.
No bank loans. Credit cards also are not the same. If you want a credit card here, you actually whatever you'd like for your limit, you pay that amount in advance, and it gets held. That's the only way you'll access a credit card here. So that's different. Or no loans for cars and things like that. So you're paying for everything up front here. But yeah, when you build a property, you're often paying every week or every month progress payments on it, which that's often different if you're doing it in other countries.
What's the meaning of life for you?
Self-discovery. I mean, I don't know, what is the meaning of life? What's your answer to that one?
For me, it's progress. From 0 to 1 in family with kids. You see your kids growing, you see your business growing, like the channel is growing. So the process of seeing something and developing something basically.
So I love that line from Tony Robbins, and he says progress equals happiness. And we speak about that a lot at work, because you think about that progress, it changes our whole physiology at that point in time. And we're kind of just a chemical factory, aren't we? Anyway, with how we respond to things. And if you're progressing, you're feeling like you're winning, everything in life changes. Like your health improves, your relationship improves. And so, I think progress equals happiness. To me, that makes a lot. I like your answer there. Progress and meaning of life. That resonates.
You can use it.
Okay, right.